it's crazy that the last game I played for review was Into Black, which took a small part of No Man's Sky and blew it up into its own game. And here we are just a couple weeks later, and I find myself playing Surviving Mars Pioneer, which takes a different part of No Man's Sky, in this case crafting and base building, and blows it up into its own game. But Pioneer feels like a No Man's Sky-like that was designed for people who just can't quite get into No Man's Sky. It's more focused, mission-driven, yet at times can feel just as overwhelming, in the best possible ways. Listen, usually when I issue a spoiler warning, it has to do with the story, things that I might have to talk about that you might not want to know about prior to playing. Surviving Mars is really light on story, so light that if you don't feel like reading computer terminals, you can ignore almost all of it. But what I need to show you during this review that I wish I didn't have to is exactly what your little one-man settlement can become, how it can change from the beginning of the game to the end, the vehicles you get access to. There's a sense of discovery here, even a sense of accomplishment that I think watching this review might somewhat diminish. If you just want to skip the whole thing and head right to the score, go to this timestamp.
Stand by Pioneer 559 for mission briefing.
Surviving Mars Pioneer starts off with you crash landing on Mars, but your communication with Earth is being blocked by 10 radio towers jamming your signal. So to survive Mars, you need to travel to each one and shut them down manually. But that's easier said than done, because I might be showing you footage of me bombing around Mars on different vehicles, spending hours in the desolate expanses, fighting through ion storms, sending rockets into space, jetpacking to the top of towering mountains, and excavating rare minerals to build up my ever-expanding base where I'm crafting resources, cultivating crops, and upgrading literally every part of my spacesuit many, many times over. But that's not how things start. You start with almost nothing. In fact, during the first few hours, you can barely be outside for more than a minute, so you'd be rushing into the wilderness for just a few seconds at a time, keeping your eye on your oxygen, nutrition, and suit integrity. Then you rush back into your tiny little studio apartment that's overcrowded with machines and underpowered because you don't have enough wind turbines built, and you just deal with what you've got until you can excavate more, build more turbines, power more machines, and improve your stuff. This gameplay loop should feel repetitive, and I mean, it is. But for whatever reason, I was just as excited to run out the door to mine some ice, iron, or carbon real quick the 100th time as I was the first few times. It's always exciting to be working towards something, unlocking a new blueprint or crafting a new machine that will help make surviving on Mars ultimately more convenient and ultimately more fun. You can call it multitasking, or you can call it busy work, or you can just call it a grind, but what it really boils down to is a complete sense of freedom to build your base in whatever way you want, and focus on whatever you want at any given time. The campaign missions will be there for you whenever you feel like getting around to them, but there's never any need to rush. That said, there is a learning curve here that needs to be addressed, and I don't mean remembering that you need 1 water and 1 iron to formulate nutrient soup, or that you need aluminum to make magnesium alloy. All of that is some real No Man's Sky stuff that thankfully gets introduced slowly, allowing you to get comfortable with crafting a few items before building a new machine that crafts more stuff with even more materials. Somehow all of this is surprisingly accessible. What I mean by the learning curve is the complete bonkers control scheme that makes no sense for the first hour that you're playing. So many of the controls are counterintuitive, relying more on quick menus and laser pointers than actual VRAF interactions. And I lost track of the number of times I went to grab an item and accidentally set my jetpack off indoors and slam my head into the ceiling. It all makes sense eventually, and just a few hours in, you'll start to understand why certain decisions were made, and I promise it's all for the best, even making it super easy to play seated. But man, it is a little frustrating to get used to. And for the most part, Surviving Mars looks good regardless of which PS5 you're using, running at 90 frames native, making every movement, every jetpack boost, and every drive super fluid. It's not the sharpest game I've ever seen, and you'll see plenty of shimmering and a bit of blur out in the distance. There's some nice lighting effects and shadows, and Surviving Mars can look surprisingly good at times, but it certainly has moments that are less than impressive too. And while I'm overall happy with the way things look, it's obvious that this was designed with Quest in mind, considering that each of these locations, which you unlock slowly by finding specific resources for your radar, are separated by quick load screens. And despite the load times being practically instantaneous, when you drive through these transitions, you're not still driving when the screen fades back in. It's strange and a little clunky, but like everything else here, it's a quirk that you do get used to eventually. There are some missing haptics when you pull levers and drive your vehicles, which feel noticeably absent, but is all partially made up for with some absolutely fantastic headset rumble when you stand near a rocket that's about to launch. Thankfully, practically all of the audio is on point, with some excellent soundscapes that sometimes make you feel heroic and sometimes just creep you out, making you wonder what's out there just beyond the horizon. The sound effects and music cues during key moments are all great here too. I played through Surviving Mars Pioneer on the default Pioneer difficulty, and although it's billed as a survival game, I only died once. Sure, it can be stressful when you're out there running low on oxygen and suddenly find yourself stranded far from home, but overall, if you pack for each trip accordingly, you shouldn't struggle too much. And there does become a point, many hours into the game, where Surviving Mars doesn't even feel like a survival game anymore. All of your stats are so boosted and you have so many supplies stocked up that you can spend hours just rearranging your habitat, building new walls or a second story, or heading out into the world to explore caves or downed ships and just seeing what you can scavenge. This place that initially seemed life-threatening suddenly starts feeling like home, and it's a pretty damn cozy home at that. See, unlike, say, Song in the Smoke, where you're always in danger, Surviving Mars lets you build a place where you're always protected from the elements, which makes you feel safe. It's a constant source of oxygen, you store food here, you can create entire rooms that do nothing but cultivate crops, making you feel like Matt Damon in The Martian. I've eaten so many potatoes, I've lost count. And if you like obsessing over organizing all the junk and ammo and weapons into the radius, Surviving Mars will scratch that itch tenfold. All of which transforms Surviving Mars Pioneer from the survival game it starts off as, to a cozy Martian life sim that it becomes in the later hours. The term addicted gets overused, I think, a lot in our industry. This game addicted me, that game addicted me. But Surviving Mars redefines the term. Over the course of just a few days, I played nearly 25 hours and only ever stopped when my Sense controllers needed to be charged. It's the kind of game that you think about when you're not playing it. I lived the Pioneer's life, and I didn't just survive Mars, I thrived there. And while I have to admit that I rushed through some of the campaign in order to roll credits just so I could get this review done, I don't doubt for a second that I could spend another 10, 15, maybe 20 hours upgrading my living quarters, my jetpack, my spacesuit, my excavator, my max oxygen and max nutrition, and hopefully Bulwark Games will give me a reason to do that. Some DLC, some new areas to explore, new side quests, or maybe even a new Game Plus mode. I'm down for whatever they have planned, but I feel guilty for even asking. Because Pioneer feels like a complete experience as is, an epic adventure that you just don't see that often in VR.
Oxygen level below 25%. Launch sequence initiated. 3, 2, 1. Liftoff.